I guard a bridge that appears only on foggy nights. The first fog. They say there are places in this world that don't exist unless you look at them the right way. Shadows that don't move with the light. Roads that appear only when you're lost. And bridges. Bridges that only show themselves when the world is cloaked in fog so thick you forget who you are. My name is Elias Greer, and I guard one such bridge. Not because I want to. Because if I don't, something crosses over. It started 10 years ago, the night I first saw the bridge. I had taken the night shift job because it paid well and didn't ask many questions. The posting said remote security post. Hazard pay included. I didn't care. After my brother disappeared the year before, I needed the solitude. People kept trying to talk to me like grief was a conversation. I didn't want words. I wanted silence. The posting led me to an isolated cabin at the edge of Fogmere Forest, tucked deep in the valleys of northern Maine. The town was barely a cluster of shacks with no internet, one broken payphone, and a general store that closed before sundown. The locals didn't speak much. And when I mentioned where I'd be working, their eyes got distant, like they were watching something behind me. "Don't linger in the mist," the old man at the store warned as he bagged my groceries. "It remembers." I laughed then, a dry, tired sound. But that was before I heard the bridge creak for the first time. The cabin where I was assigned sat on the edge of a field, and beyond it, a slope rolled down into a thick forest cut by a black river. There was no marked bridge. The river itself vanished into darkness, just wet rocks and fog. On my first 3 nights, I walked the perimeter with my flashlight, saw nothing but trees and animal tracks. But on the 4th night, the fog rolled in. It came like a living thing, thick and crawling, swallowing the trees and curling around my boots. I stepped out with my thermos, thinking I'd log my usual patrol, check the perimeter and head back in. But the second I reached the river's edge, I saw it. Bridge. Stone. Covered in moss that looked like it grew from centuries of damp silence. Its arches glistened wetly, and each step of its path was barely visible through the fog. It hadn't been there before. I was certain. The river beneath it had changed too. It no longer babbled over stones. It was still. Black. A mirror with no reflection. I radioed it in. Got static. I stood there for a long time, staring. The bridge didn't feel abandoned. Felt waiting. I don't know what made me take that first step. Curiosity, maybe. Or maybe something older. Something colder. But I placed my boot on the first moss-covered stone and instantly felt a shift in the air, like the forest itself held its breath. The fog thickened. And from the other side of the bridge, I heard footsteps. Low. But deliberate. Froze. "Hello," called. No answer. But the footsteps didn't stop. They grew louder. Closer. And then I saw it, just a silhouette at first. A figure standing still in the fog at the far end of the bridge. It wasn't walking anymore. Just watching. Backed off. Rest. The moment my foot left the stone path, the bridge groaned. An ancient, shuddering sound like it was trying to remember something. Then the fog swallowed it whole. When I looked again, it was gone. No bridge. No figure. Nothing but dark water and silence. I ran back to the cabin. Didn't sleep that night. The next morning I tried to rationalize it. A trick of the light. Fatigue. Hallucination. But when I asked my supervisor, he didn't laugh. He just said, "You saw it then?" I demanded answers. He handed me a small, leather-bound journal. Yellowed pages. Old handwriting. No name. Just dates and entries. All of them marked during foggy nights. The entries were brief, clipped, like the writer had been in a rush, or too afraid to write more. Bridge appeared. Heard whispers this time. 3rd night. Saw woman in black on far end. She waved. Something crossed. I heard it in the walls. Do not speak to them. Do not step on the bridge again. My supervisor tapped a finger on the last entry. You're not here to cross, Elias. You're here to keep others from doing so. I stared at him. Cross what? He didn't answer. That night I stayed inside. Locked the doors. lit a fire and tried to read the journal. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The wind outside howled through the trees, and the fog came again, faster this time, pressing against the windows like wet cotton. Muffled all sound. At 2:37 a.m., the radio crackled. Static. Then a voice. Not mine. Not my supervisor's. Help me. The voice was faint. Female. Panic. Then closer. I'm on the bridge, please. I turned the radio off. My skin felt like ice, like my blood had stopped moving. I tried to convince myself it was a prank. Or a dream. Until the knock came at the door. 3 soft taps. I didn't move. Elias. Came the whisper. Not from outside. From under the floor. Conclusion. By morning the fog was gone. So was the bridge. I found fresh footprints at the riverbank. Bare, human. Leading to the water's edge. Then stopping as if the person had vanished into thin air. That was the first time the bridge appeared to me. It wouldn't be the last. And I've come to learn one thing. That bridge isn't just a place. It's a door. And doors once opened don't always close. The whisper beneath the floorboards. The days felt longer after that first encounter. I couldn't shake the voice, the knock, or the way my name had floated up through the floor like smoke curling from something buried deep and festering. I told myself I imagined it. That the pressure of the job and the oppressive silence of Fogmere was getting to me. But deep down, something was shifting, like a gear turning in an old, rusted machine that hadn't moved in years. I started sleeping with the lights on. My supervisor didn't ask for updates. Think he knew. I think he was waiting for the second appearance. It came 4 nights later. That night, the fog came earlier, rolling in before sundown, thick as soup. I knew it would be back, the bridge. I wasn't ready, but I forced myself to suit up. Flashlight. Journal. A hunting knife, though I doubted it would help. I stepped outside into the gray and almost immediately lost the cabin behind me. The world shrank to 5 feet in every direction. I followed the narrow trail down to the river. Sure enough, the bridge was waiting, stone and ancient-looking, wet with mist, rising out of the water like it had always been there. The air was so still it hurt my ears. This time I didn't step on it. I stayed by the tree line and watched. For a while nothing happened. Just the fog curling over the water, brushing the edges of the bridge like fingers. Then I heard it. Child crying. It echoed faintly across the fog, soft, trembling sobs. Not a scream. Not a yell. Just the quiet, rhythmic sound of a child who had cried themselves hoarse. It sent chills down my spine. "Hello!" called out. My voice felt swallowed by the mist. The crying stopped. Footsteps echoed on the bridge, but I couldn't see anyone. I backed up, hand on the knife. And then, they appeared. First, just a shadow in the fog. Then a form. A little boy, maybe 6 years old, in striped pajamas, barefoot and wet. His skin was pale, eyes wide and black. No whites. Just endless dark, like he'd stared too long into something bottomless. He stood at the center of the bridge, arms hanging at his sides, watching me. I wanted to run. I couldn't move. "Are you lost?" Yes. He didn't speak. Behind him, the fog twisted unnaturally. It curled and coiled, rising into shapes that didn't belong. Limbs too long. Faces that flickered. The shadows moved like they were breathing. The boy stepped forward. "Stop," I said instinctively. "Don't come closer." He did anyway, one slow step at a time. I reached for the flare gun clipped to my belt and fired it into the sky. The light flared blood red, piercing the fog for a moment. And just like that, the bridge was empty. The boy was gone. But the crying continued. Only now it was coming from the trees behind me. Turned slowly. There was nothing. The crying stopped. Silence pressed in again, so heavy I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. I stayed at the river's edge until the fog began to lift. When I finally returned to the cabin, there were small, muddy footprints on the porch, child-sized, leading to the door, but none going away. I opened the door slowly. Inside, the fire was out. My journal lay open on the table. and something had written across the page in jagged, childlike letters. You left me. That night I didn't sleep. I sat with my back against the door, knife in hand, trying not to breathe too loudly. I called my supervisor the next morning. Told him everything. There was a long silence on the other end. Ignore them, he said finally. They'll try to bait you. Regret is their favorite mask. What the hell does that mean? They'll come in different forms. Faces from your memory. Some might even look like your brother. The line went dead. That was the first time he'd ever mentioned Caleb. I never told him about my brother. Never told anyone how Caleb had gone hiking in the woods one summer and never came back. Just vanished. Search parties found nothing. Not a shred of clothing. Not a trail. Like the forest swallowed him whole. I wondered then, had he seen the bridge? Had he crossed? The thought rooted itself deep and poisonous in my mind. That evening, I sat at the river's edge again, before the fog rolled in. I stared at the water, watching the reflection of the trees distort and shift. I thought about Caleb, his laugh, the way he used to hum when he cooked eggs. The last photo I had of him, taken near a trailhead just like the one that led to this cursed place. The fog came faster that night. It crawled low and thick, heavier than before. When the bridge appeared, I was already waiting. This time I wasn't alone. There was someone already standing at the midpoint of the bridge. Not a shadow. Not a child. Man. He wore a red flannel shirt. Worn jeans. Hiking boots. His head was tilted slightly, like he was listening for something. My mouth went dry. Caleb, I whispered. He turned his head toward me slowly. It was him. Same face. Same posture. A little older maybe, but unchanged in the way dreams preserve people. He looked at me with no recognition. Just a dull, empty stare. I took a step forward without thinking. Caleb. It's me, it's Elias. He didn't speak. But he raised one hand and pointed behind me. Turned. Something was standing in the trees. Its limbs were too long, joints bent the wrong way. No face. Just a wide mouth stretching across its head like a crack in porcelain. It didn't move. But I couldn't stop staring. Then I heard footsteps again. Turning back, the bridge was empty. Caleb was gone. The thing in the trees had vanished too. But behind me, I heard a wet thump, like something heavy dropping onto the cabin's roof. I ran back, lungs burning, heart in my throat. The door was wide open. Inside, the journal lay on the floor, pages flipping in a wind that wasn't there. One sentence had been burned into the wood of the table, charred black and smoking. Don't look away. That was last night. I haven't left the cabin since. But the fog hasn't lifted. And now, from the trees, I can hear my brother humming. Just like he used to when he made eggs. The things that walk when the fog stays. The humming didn't stop. It grew louder by the hour, sometimes fading into a soft whistle, sometimes breaking into broken phrases of an old lullaby our mother used to sing, one I hadn't heard since I was 7. But now it wrapped around the cabin like a noose, winding through cracks in the walls, slithering beneath the floorboards, soaking into my skin. I stuffed cotton into my ears. Didn't matter. I heard it anyway, inside my head. Not just Caleb's voice anymore. Others joined in. Higher. Lower. A chorus that knew my name and wore it like a chain. The fog had refused to lift for 2 days straight. That had never happened before. The river, once a visible boundary between normal and nightmare, had vanished completely under the gray. I tried radioing for help. Nothing but static. Even the emergency beacon mounted outside was dead. Like the air itself had swallowed all signals. I hadn't eaten. Barely drank. My world had shrunk to the inside of the cabin and the moaning things outside that kept brushing up against the walls. I could hear them drag their fingers along the logs, tap against the windows with nails or knuckles. I couldn't tell which. At night they whispered, "Elias." Soft and syrupy. "Come out." I pushed furniture against every door and window. Lit every candle I had. Still didn't feel safe. Around midnight I heard the creaking. Floorboards. Inside. Something was in the cabin. I stood frozen in the corner of the room, knife clutched in a trembling hand. The fire had died out again. My flashlight flickered even with fresh batteries. I aimed it at the hallway. Nothing. But I could feel it. The pressure in the air. The weight of something breathing just out of sight. Then came the dragging sound. Low. But. Like something pulling itself across the floor. My light blinked once, twice, then steadied. There was a trail. Dark and glistening, smeared across the hallway floor. It disappeared beneath the trapdoor to the cellar. I'd never opened that door before. It had been locked when I arrived. The supervisor told me not to bother with it. Just old tools and junk, he'd said. But the lock was gone now. Cleanly removed. I didn't want to. Every instinct screamed not to. But the trail led there. And something down there was calling my name in Caleb's voice. Open the door. The air that spilled up smelled of damp soil, rot, and old blood. I descended the steps slowly. Flashlight beam jittering over dirt walls lined with rotting beams. The smell grew stronger the deeper I went. The cellar wasn't large. Just a single chamber about 10 feet wide, lined with crates and shelves. But at the far end there was a hole. Perfectly round, dark tunnel in the earth. Like something had clawed through it, carving downward into the ground. The humming came from there. I leaned closer. My flashlight caught something just inside the tunnel. Fabric. A red flannel sleeve. I reached out slowly, hand shaking, and grabbed it. It was an arm. Still warm. Still attached. I yanked, and the body slid forward. No resistance. My heart stopped. It was Caleb. Or it looked like him. Open. Mouth agape in a silent scream. Skin pale, veined with black lines that pulsed faintly under the surface like something moving inside him. He blinked. I screamed. He moved. His mouth didn't open, but his voice crawled out of his throat in a whisper. You're not guarding the bridge, Elias. I backed up, tripped, landed hard. You left your post. Now it comes here. He began to crawl toward me, limbs stiff like a marionette. I tried to stop it, he said. But you let it in. I scrambled up the stairs, slammed the trapdoor shut, and dragged a bookshelf over it. The thudding started immediately. Something slamming against the underside of the door, over and over. Not Caleb. Not anymore. I stood in the kitchen, shaking, as the humming outside resumed. It was louder now. Joyful. Almost celebratory. They knew. They were coming. Around dawn, if you could call it that through the fog, I tried to leave. Packed a bag, shoved supplies inside, and made for the tree line. But the path was gone. Not overgrown, gone. The forest had shifted. Every trail led me back to the cabin. No birds. No rustling. No sound except the crunch of my own footsteps, and always just behind me, a second set. Barefoot. By noon I realized I was trapped. By dusk, the fog thickened again, if that was even possible. That night, I didn't bother blocking the doors. I sat by the fire, knife in hand, waiting. And then they knocked. 3 soft knocks. Not frantic. Not urgent. Just polite. I didn't answer. But I saw the doorknob turn. And the voice that came from the other side was my mother's. Elias, sweetie. Open the door. She's been dead 10 years. Dinner's ready, she said. Footsteps circled the cabin. Then came the sound of keys. Old brass keys rattling on a ring. The lock clicked. The door creaked open on its own. And what stood there wasn't her. Not really. It had her face. Her clothes. Even the little scar on her cheek from where she'd cut herself shaving carrots one Thanksgiving. But its eyes were bleeding. Mouth too wide. Smiling. I made your favorite, it said, holding up a plate with something wriggling on it. I didn't scream. I just shut my eyes and wished myself anywhere else. When I opened them it was gone. But the cabin smelled like burned meat and sulfur. I didn't sleep. The next day, I ventured to the river again. The bridge was still there. Only now it was wider. Longer. And there were figures standing all along it. Motionless. Watching me. Some were children. Some were old. Some crawled instead of stood. They didn't move. Just waited. A voice whispered beside me. "She's crossing soon." Turned. No one there. But on the riverbank was a single shoe. Child-sized. Soaked in blood. I ran back to the cabin, only to find the windows covered from the inside with pages torn from my journal. Each one had a single word scribbled over and over. "Stay." Tore them down. Behind one window was a face staring in. Not a person. Just a face. Pressed to the glass. Grinning. It faded into the fog before I could react. I think something's trying to keep me here. And something else is trying to come through. And I don't know which is worse. Tomorrow I'll try the bridge. Not to cross. Just to understand. 'Cause I think I'm the last guard. And if I fail, walk's free. I stepped onto the bridge. I waited until the sky turned to iron. That strange pre-night hush settling over everything like the world was holding its breath. I hadn't eaten again. Couldn't. My stomach was tied in knots and the air tasted like rust. I packed my flashlight, the old journal I found in the cabin's storage room, and the knife. Not that the blade would do much against whatever those things were. The fog was thicker tonight. I could barely see 10 feet ahead, and what little I saw was distorted, shapes rippling like they were underwater. I knew better now. Some of the shapes weren't tricks of the fog. Some of them watched you when you turned your back. The bridge appeared around midnight. As always. But this time it was alive. I mean that in every sense. It pulsed like it had veins. The wooden planks shimmered faintly, breathing in and out, and the mist coiled over it like it was being exhaled. The ropes that formed the railings were wet, sagging, covered in something slick. And there were handprints on every single plank. Hundreds, maybe thousands, pressed into the wood, some child-sized, some long and crooked like the fingers had too many joints. I hesitated at the edge, just outside where the first plank began. And then I heard her. "Elias," a soft voice said. "Help me." It was Maisie. My sister's voice. Maisie had died in that river 10 years ago. She'd fallen from this very bridge. At least the normal version of it when we were kids. I saw her vanish into the water. No body was ever found. People said it was a strong current. Said maybe she got pulled downstream. But I remembered the look on her face as she went under. She wasn't drowning. She was looking past me into the fog. Smiling. Now her voice floated out again, like the fog had remembered it. "I'm cold, Eli. Come find me." The part of me that knew better screamed not to move. But something else, something deeper, urged me forward. I stepped onto the bridge. Nothing happened at first. No sudden collapse, no hands grabbing my ankles, no screams from the fog. Just silence. And then the air changed. Everything behind me, cabin, trees, land, disappeared. One step in, and the world erased itself. All that remained was the bridge, vanishing into endless white. I turned around. The path I'd taken was gone. Just more fog. No beginning. No end. The wood under my feet trembled. Heartbeat slow and deliberate. The second plank moaned as I stepped onto it. Not a creak. Moan. From below. I moved slowly, one plank at a time, listening. The fog curled around me, thick as soup. I could hear breathing. Not mine. Heavy. Wet. Guttural. Then whispers started. I couldn't understand them at first. Foreign, garbled. But soon the words sharpened. "Too late," they hissed. "She's already home." I looked down. The river was gone. In its place, something black churned far beneath the bridge, shifting like a sea of insects. It wasn't water. It was writhing, clawing, whispering. "Stop." That's when I saw them. Figures rising from the fog ahead. First one. Then 4. Then a dozen. They lined the bridge like sentinels. Hollow. Skin gray, mottled like old paper. Each had no mouth. Just a smooth expanse of skin where lips should be. But they were humming. God, the humming. My ears ached from it. I tightened my grip on the knife, unsure what I was doing or where I was even going anymore. One of the figures stepped forward. taller than the rest, head tilted like it was studying me. Then it raised its hand and pointed behind me. Turned. Maisie stood at the start of the bridge. Only it wasn't Maisie. It had her face. But too pale. It's too big. Smiled too wide. And its skin like wax melting under heat. "You're not supposed to be here, Eli," it said sweetly. "This is our place." I stumbled back. The tall figure ahead stepped closer again. Its chest split open without a sound. Not bleeding. Just parting. From inside, a light flickered, golden like sunlight, but warped like it came from behind oily glass. And I saw something inside that light. A moment from my childhood. Me and Maisie, skipping stones by the river. Laughing. Then another flash. Me pushing her as a joke. She slips. Falls. Her scream. The memory hit me like a fist. I had repressed that part. Always told myself she tripped. That I wasn't responsible. But the bridge remembered. It fed off it. I dropped to my knees. The humming crescendoed. The figures on the bridge all raised their hands now, pointing at me. Their mouths slowly stretched open. Not real mouths but slits forming in the flesh. From those slits came voices. Hundreds. All people I'd known. Some I hadn't. All screaming. I couldn't move. Then something wrapped around my ankle. I looked down. Hand. Bill. Clawed. Reaching up from between the boards. Another followed. And another. They started pulling. Not to drag me off, but to pull me through the bridge. Into it. I screamed, kicked, slashed with the knife. The fog swallowed my cries. Then I remembered the journal. The old one from the cabin. I fumbled it out of my coat, flipping through pages with bloodied fingers. One entry. Step onto the bridge and it shows you the truth. Stand too long and it makes you part of the lie. I ripped the page out and shoved it into my mouth, hoping somehow the bridge wouldn't like the taste of truth. The hands recoiled. Just enough. I leapt up and ran, back, not forward. Planks groaning, figures shrieking, the humming now a siren. I didn't look back. Just ran. And then I was off the bridge. The second my feet hit earth, the bridge vanished behind me. Like it had never been there. Collapse. Woke up in the cabin. The fire was lit. And someone had left a message on the wall, scrawled in ash. "One more step and you would have stayed." My ankle still ached. But I was alive. Now. Yet the bridge will come again. And next time it might not let me go. The whispering beneath the planks. The fog was thicker than ever. Not just in the air, but in my thoughts, in the marrow of my bones. I couldn't tell where the bridge ended and I began. Every breath felt stolen from someone else. My hands trembled as I lit the lantern, each flick of the flame casting long, jerking shadows across the twisted planks beneath my feet. Tonight I wasn't just guarding the bridge. I was part of it. It started the moment I heard the whisper. Not out loud, no. Came from beneath the bridge. A sound too soft to be wind. Too intentional to be anything else. Like a voice being filtered through layers of damp wood and old regret. Child's voice. Eliza. It was Maisie's name. My sister's name. But it wasn't her voice. It was wrong. Too slow. Too careful. Like something was practicing the way her name used to sound, trying to get it right. I leaned over the edge, holding the lantern low, its light fighting against the pressing fog. The water below didn't look like water anymore. It was black glass, perfectly still. I should have seen my reflection. Instead I saw eyes. Hundreds of them. Blinking up at me. Fell back. The whispering got louder. Eliza. Come down here. Safe down here. It's warm. I backed away from the edge, clutching the journal to my chest like a shield. I didn't remember grabbing it, but it was there. It was always there now. The pages fluttered on their own, windless and alive. One stopped under my hand, an entry I hadn't seen before. The ink was fresher than the others. But, like someone had just written it. If you hear their voices from below, do not answer. Do not look. They know your sorrow. They know your shape. They do not sleep. then scrawled across the bottom in desperate slashes. They live in the planks. The whispering stopped. Dead silence. And then the bridge groaned beneath me. One of the planks bulged upward, as if something underneath was pressing against it. Then another. Then another. A rhythm. Crawl. I stepped back quickly, but the bridge shifted. Slanted. I was being funneled toward the center. And then they began to rise. Fingers. Human fingers forcing their way up through the cracks between the boards. Snapping, bending, clawing toward open air. Pale and waterlogged. One after another. Hundreds. Hands followed arms, shoulders. Bodies began to pull themselves through the bridge itself. People made of wood and rot and regret. Their faces were featureless. Just smooth skin where eyes and mouths should be. But I recognized the shapes. The postures. I recognized her. Maisie. Or what the bridge wanted me to believe was Maisie. The thing that wore her shape tilted its head. She opened her mouth, and from it came not her voice but mine. Eliza, you left me. I shook my head, tears hot in my eyes. I didn't. Tried. I was a kid. You watched me drown. It wasn't true. I had jumped in after her. I remembered the cold, the struggle, the weight of her hand slipping from mine. But the bridge didn't care about truth. It fed on guilt. I turned and ran. The bridge stretched, grew longer. I could hear the footsteps of the others behind me, slapping wetly against the wood. They didn't run. They just walked, and the bridge moved with them, like it wanted me trapped. The lantern flickered. I was running blind. And then, out of nowhere, another figure stepped from the fog ahead. Man. Middle-aged. Dressed like someone from decades ago. A uniform, maybe. His face was gaunt, haunted. He didn't speak, just raised one finger to his lips. The dead behind me stopped. The bridge went still. He pointed to the side, toward a crack between the railing boards. A narrow space, almost invisible. Hiding place. I hesitated. He didn't wait. He shoved me. I tumbled into the darkness between the boards, sliding into a hidden hollow beneath the bridge I hadn't known existed. And then quiet. I pressed my back against damp wood, listening as the dead shuffled overhead. I could hear them breathing. No sniffing. Like dogs. They were looking for me. I held my breath until my chest ached, until my lungs begged for air. Then slowly the sounds faded. I was alone. Or so I thought. A match flared beside me. The man in the uniform was there, sitting cross-legged, lighting an old oil lamp. His face looked hollow in the flickering light. I used to be you, he said quietly. Bridge keeper. I didn't know what to say. How long have you been here? Finally asked. He smiled sadly. Time doesn't work right here. Sometimes it loops. Sometimes it skips. But I've seen the bridge take 300 people. Sometimes all at once. Sometimes slow. Always the same hunger. He set the lamp down between us. Why did you help me? Because you haven't crossed yet. That makes you different. You still have a choice. I frowned. What do you mean, crossed? He nodded toward the center of the bridge. There's a line. You don't see it. But once you step over, you're part of it. The fog owns you. You can't leave. Then why does it let people walk on it at all? His expression darkened. Because it wants you to cross. It wants you to believe there's something to find. A loved one. Truth. Redemption. But it's a lie. Always a lie. He leaned closer, eyes burning in the dim light. But some of us. We try to stop it. We stay. We warn. We wait. Then why not destroy it? Yes. Burn it down. Cut it apart. He looked away. We've tried. You can't burn grief. Can't cut sorrow. The bridge is built from memory and mourning. As long as people suffer, it will exist. Silence settled between us like ash. He reached into his coat and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He handed it to me. A knife. Silver. Heavy. Only use this if it touches you. Not when it calls. Not when it cries. Only when it reaches. I took it, unsure if my hand was shaking or the knife was. The man stood. They'll come again soon. You'll need to leave before they do. Where do I go? He paused. Back to the start. Back to the post. Guard the bridge. Keep others from crossing. I looked up at him, suddenly understanding. You're leaving, aren't you? He didn't answer. He just faded into the mist like he was part of it. I crawled back up onto the bridge as the fog thickened again. And for the first time I understood. This wasn't a path. It was a trap. And now I was the bait. The toll they demand. The fog was thicker tonight. Dense as cotton and twice as suffocating. My lantern barely pierced more than a foot ahead, and even that light shimmered oddly, like it was being swallowed by something hungry and unseen. I stood at the base of the bridge, the knife tucked into my coat pocket, cold and waiting. I hadn't seen the man since he vanished into the mist. No sign. No sound. Just me now. And the bridge. Hours passed. Maybe more. Time meant nothing out here. The fog made every second stretch and twist. But then shapes. 2 of them. Figures walking toward me, their outlines blurry but real. I stepped forward, hand tightening on the lantern. Stop right there, I said, voice firmer than I felt. The bridge isn't safe. They hesitated. A man and a woman. Tourists maybe. Drenched in that eerie glow, they looked like ghosts already. The woman stepped forward. Please, she said, trembling. We heard something out here. Screaming. Her eyes were wide, wet. Real. Too real. I know what you heard, I said, keeping my distance. But you can't cross this bridge. No one can. It's a trap. The man narrowed his eyes. Who are you to tell us where we can walk? Before I could answer, the planks beneath their feet creaked. Just once. Loud and deep. Froze. So did they. The bridge didn't like impatience. A low groan trembled through the wood, like something was stretching beneath it. Waking. I stepped forward quickly. You need to back away. Now. The woman turned to her partner. Let's just go. I don't like this. But he didn't move. He was staring at the bridge, at the fog curling around it like fingers. His mouth hung open slightly. A whisper tickled the edge of my hearing. Jeremy. He blinked. Did you hear that? I swallowed hard. Don't listen to it. That's how it starts. He took another step forward. And the bridge shuddered. I moved to stop him, but the fog surged suddenly, splitting in front of the man like a curtain, and something stepped through. Something wearing his face. It was him, but not. Bloated. Wet. Eyes black and crawling with tiny things. His mouth opened too wide, too slowly. Jeremy, it crooned. The real Jeremy screamed. His doppelganger lunged. I grabbed the knife without thinking, pulled it free, and ran toward them. The woman fell back as the thing tackled Jeremy to the planks, pinning him, mouth gaping. I plunged the silver blade into the creature's neck. It shrieked, a high, keening sound that sliced through the fog and made my teeth ache. The creature dissolved into black water. Jeremy lay shaking, eyes wide in terror. His skin had started to gray at the edges, like the thing had been draining him just by touching him. I helped him up. You need to leave, I said more urgently now. Both of you. Go back the way you came and don't stop. Don't look back. I ran. The fog tried to follow, but I stepped in its way. The bridge groaned in protest. It wanted more. That night I made it to the center of the bridge for the first time. The exact middle, where the planks curved slightly downward, and the air grew colder than anywhere else. There was a pattern here. Symbols scorched into the wood. Not burned, but branded, like the bridge itself had once been alive and carved into. I knelt, brushing aside dust and old blood. They were sigils, warnings, or instructions. One caught my eye. A spiral inside a jagged box. My fingers hovered over it, and I felt something thrum through the planks. Vibration. A voice not quite words, humming beneath everything. That's when I saw them. Figures in the fog, just beyond the railing. Watching. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. All pale. All still. One of them stepped forward. It was a boy. Barefoot. Shirtless. Skin pale and translucent like he'd been underwater too long. He walked with a slow, mechanical grace. He stopped a few feet away and crouched. "Do you remember me?" he asked. I didn't. But the bridge did. Spoke through him. "You left me in the woods when we were children. You promised to come back." My breath hitched. That had happened. A game of hide and seek when I was 8. Boy named Sam. I'd gotten scared and run home. He hadn't come back out. They'd never found him. "You're not him," I whispered. He smiled. "No," he agreed. "But he's part of me now." I stood blade in hand. "Why are you showing me these things?" His smile widened into something monstrous. "Because you're breaking the rules." He pointed toward the far end of the bridge. "I can show you what happens when the toll isn't paid." Before I could answer, the fog lifted slightly, and I saw them. A line of bodies beneath the bridge, suspended in the air, hanging upside down like meat in a freezer. Dozens of them. Faces twisted in mid-scream. Some were missing eyes. Others had mouths sewn shut. Every one of them had tried to cross without a price. The toll was memory, grief, pain. The bridge didn't just want souls. It wanted stories. "You've lasted longer than most," the boy said. "But everyone pays eventually." And then he was gone. Just a ripple in the fog. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the edge of the bridge, knife on my lap, journal open beside me. I reread the entries. So many voices, warnings, all lost. And still I stayed. Because someone had to. Because if I left, no one would stop the next person. And because I'd begun to hear it again. Maisie's voice. Not just in dreams anymore. In the bridge. In the fog. And sometimes when the wind blew just right, I could hear her laughing underneath the planks. Not scared. Not sad. Just waiting. The bridge remembers. It was just before midnight when the fog crept in, slower than usual. Not rolling, not flowing, but slithering. It crawled over the ground like something alive, weaving between the trees with intent. I'd learned to read the fog's moods, and tonight it felt restless, agitated, hungry. I stood at my post, lantern swinging slightly in my hand. The bridge was silent, save for the occasional groan of wood shifting beneath its own cursed weight. I had a feeling something was coming, something worse than before. I could feel it pressing in from all sides, like the air itself was closing around me. Then, for the first time in weeks, the fog parted behind me. I turned sharply, and there she was, Maisie, or something wearing her shape. She stood at the edge of the trees, pale dress fluttering around her knees, hair tangled with dew and cobwebs. Her eyes met mine, but they weren't the bright hazel I remembered. They were empty, clouded like someone drowned. I didn't speak. I didn't move. She stepped forward, feet bare, silent as a shadow. "Why did you leave me?" she asked, voice soft and hollow. My throat tightened. "Maisie." "You told me to wait," she whispered. And I waited. I waited until the fog took my name. I felt the knife in my pocket. Its weight seemed heavier now. I could hear it humming softly, like it recognized her. "I didn't know," I said, barely able to get the words out. "I thought you were behind me." Her lips twitched. Not quite a smile. "You didn't even look back." My knees felt weak. Shame hit me harder than the cold ever had. The bridge groaned behind me. Long, low sound. It wasn't just Maisie standing there. It was what she had become. And now, the bridge was reacting to her presence like it recognized its own creation. She walked past me, slow, graceful, as if the fog itself parted for her. I didn't try to stop her. The lantern in my hand flickered violently as she stepped onto the first plank. "You shouldn't be here," I finally said. "I was always here," she answered. "Even when you forgot." As she moved toward the middle of the bridge, I followed. Every step felt like walking into a dream I couldn't wake from. She stopped at the exact spot where the markings had appeared days before. The spiral in the jagged box. The cursed brand of this place. Maisie turned to me. I remember everything now, she said. What happened to the others? What the bridge took from them? And what it gave back? Her hands trembled at her sides. It showed me how to speak again, she whispered. But only in screams. Then the fog around her exploded outward. Shapes emerged, dozens, maybe more. Children, women. Some wore uniforms, others rags. All of them with clouded eyes, mouths that moved without sound, limbs jerking in unnatural ways. I backed away instinctively, nearly tripping over a plank. Maisie stood at their center, her head tilted toward me. You've guarded this place for too long, she said. Now it wants more than memory. I drew the blade. I won't let it take anyone else. You still think you're stopping it? She asked, smiling bitterly. You're just its voice. The one who says, don't cross, knowing they still will. The one who watches as it feeds. I shook my head. That's not true. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure. The memories I carried, were they all mine? Or had the bridge pressed them into me over time like a stamp, reshaping who I was? I turned back toward the woods. Another figure stood at the tree line. The man with no face. He hadn't appeared since the first night he crossed, and vanished. Now he stood with arms outstretched, palms facing the fog. His body twitched like a puppet barely held together. Something pulsed in his chest, a light, dim and flickering. Maisie saw him too. He opened the gate, she whispered. And it never closed. I stepped between her and the faceless man. If you're still in there, fight it. Don't let the bridge use you. But the man didn't respond. Instead he stepped forward. And every spirit behind Maisie stepped with him. The bridge groaned. Sound like bones splintering underwater. A rip opened in the fog behind them. A tear in reality itself. Through it, I saw glimpses of a vast, rotting world. A swamp of limbs and fog. Bridges stacked on bridges in infinite layers, stretching into a horizon that didn't exist. And in the center of that nightmare web was a pulsing heart of black wood and screaming souls. The first bridge. The original one. And now it wanted to pull this place into it. Fuse with the one I stood on. One more piece in its endless mouth. I can stop it, Maisie said beside me. But I'll need you. I turned to her, heart pounding. How? Her expression darkened. You know how. Knife. It had always wanted blood. But not just any blood. Or hers. A willing offering. The bridge didn't want to be guarded anymore. It wanted a keeper. Someone bound to it. I looked at her, really looked. And for the first time I saw the cracks in her form, the shifting mist beneath her skin. She wasn't just Maisie anymore. She was part of it. But she still waited for my choice. I won't feed it, I said. But I'll go with you. Maisie nodded once. Then we finish it. I gripped the blade and slit my palm. Blood dripped to the wood. The fog screamed. The spirits reeled backward, hissing, clawing at the air. The faceless man collapsed to his knees, body unraveling like smoke in reverse. The bridge shuddered violently as black water burst from between the planks, soaking everything. Maisie stepped beside me and pressed her hand to mine, mixing our blood. A wave of cold passed through me. The symbols at the bridge's center began to glow red-hot. From the rip in the fog, the heart of the original bridge let out a final roar, a sound of rage and hunger denied. And then, silence. The spirits vanished. The rip sealed shut. The fog lifted. I opened my eyes. The bridge remained. But now, it was quiet. Maisie was gone. And I was alone. But I felt it in my bones. I wasn't just a guard anymore. I was something more. And the bridge would never let me go. Things that shouldn't cross. The fog had thinned that morning. Not vanished, but diluted like ink swirling in water. The sun peeked through just enough to cast pale, sickly light over the trees. But the bridge still stood, solid and silent, as if it had never groaned or bled or screamed. I hadn't moved from my post since the night before. Maisie was gone. Or rather, whatever was left of her had dissolved with the tear in the fog. She'd become something the bridge needed to forget in order to survive. Me. I wasn't sure what I was anymore. My wound had healed too fast. The skin on my palm was already sealed over, leaving behind a raised mark that looked disturbingly like the spiral symbol on the bridge's center plank. A mark of ownership. I belonged to the bridge now. But the bridge was different too. I could feel it. It was like waking up in a house where all the furniture had been rearranged while you slept. Still yours but no longer familiar. That evening the fog returned, but it didn't crawl in like before. Fell like a curtain. One second the forest was visible. The next it wasn't. And this time something was already on the bridge. It hadn't crossed. It hadn't approached. Just was. I took a step forward, lantern raised. It was a child. A little boy, maybe 6 or 7, in a red coat and rubber boots. He stood at the midpoint, staring down at the wooden planks as though trying to read them. My stomach turned. Children hadn't appeared since the early days. The bridge usually chose adults, those full of guilt, burdened with secrets. What could a child possibly offer? I approached slowly, the fog shifting around my legs like water. "Hey," I called gently. "Are you lost?" The boy didn't answer. As I got closer, I saw that his boots were dry, but his coat was soaked, as if he'd been submerged in deep water moments before appearing. His hair clung to his face in wet clumps, and his lips were a faint shade of blue. He raised his head to look at me. His eyes weren't right. Not glowing, not blank, just wrong. Like something behind them wasn't made for this world. "I'm not supposed to be here," he said. His voice echoed, but not from the bridge. From somewhere inside my own head. "Where did you come from?" "Yes." He pointed beyond the bridge. Into the fog. "They pushed me out. Said I was cracked. Said I'd let the others through if they kept me." I crouched down, careful not to break eye contact. "What others?" "The ones in the dark. They're waiting for you to stop watching." My skin went cold. The boy looked down at his hands. "They made me carry it," he whispered. "I didn't want to, but they stitched it into my chest." "What did they make you carry?" He looked up at me again, and this time he smiled. His teeth were wrong. Not sharp or monstrous. Just too many. I stumbled back. And that's when I saw the black threads poking through his coat, winding up his neck like veins drawn in ink. The boy screamed. But it wasn't a child's scream. It was a chorus. Hundreds of voices shrieking in perfect sync, bleeding out of him like smoke. The fog exploded outward. Figures emerged from both sides of the bridge. Not walking, crawling, twisting, writhing. Some wore the shapes of men and women. Others dragged broken limbs behind them. One slithered like a snake made of hands. They weren't just crossing anymore. They were invading. I backed toward the tree line, blade drawn, but the bridge's glow began to pulse. Softly at first, then brighter, faster. The mark on my palm burned hot, syncing with the heartbeat of the wood beneath me. A voice echoed from behind the fog. "Stop guarding." The boy's mouth opened again, and this time something began to emerge from it. A black root, pulsing and slick. "You keep it trapped," the voice hissed. "You keep us trapped." The boy collapsed, the root spilling from his mouth and growing along the planks like ivy made of shadow. Lashed out, snaking toward me. Ran. Back into the forest. Away from the bridge. For the first time in years I abandoned my post. But I didn't make it far. Trees were wrong. Turned inward. Looping paths where none had existed before. I ran for what felt like hours. And somehow I ended up back at the bridge. But it had changed. The fog was no longer just fog, it was flesh. It pulsed like a lung, each inhale drawing me closer. The bridge no longer looked wooden, but organic, lined with tendons and bone, glowing faintly with sickly yellow light. And in the center stood the boy again. Only now he towered over the bridge. His body twisted and broken, held together by thousands of black threads. He raised one hand. And the bridge bowed. Not cracked, not swayed. Bowed. as if acknowledging its new master. I dropped to my knees, blade clattering to the wood. My mark still glowed. And I knew what they wanted. Not just to pass. Not just to kill. They wanted to become the bridge. To wear it as a doorway. To enter the world through it. Picked up the blade. There was one thing left I hadn't tried. Destroying the anchor. Me. If I died here, maybe the bridge would seal shut again. Maybe. I raised the blade to my chest. And then, hand caught mine. Mizzy. Or the echo of her. She wasn't whole. A flickering figure like flame seen through water. But her eyes were clear now. You can't stop it this way, she said. Tears filled my eyes. Then how? She placed her hand over mine. You keep watching. And just like that she was gone. The fog snapped backward like a rubber band. The boy screamed, threads pulling him back into the void. The bridge returned to wood. The heartbeat faded. And I was alone again. Still the watcher. Still the guard. But the message was clear. The bridge was changing. And something was coming that even it couldn't control. The weight of watching. I've stopped pretending that the bridge obeys rules. Doesn't. Not mine, not nature's, not even time's. Some nights it stands silent, cold as stone, untouched by fog or fear. Other nights, like now, it breathes. It hungers. Tonight the fog returned with weight. Not the usual creeping mist but something heavier, almost oily. It pressed against my skin like wet wool, and when I inhaled, it clung to my lungs. I could taste it, coppery like blood and rust. I didn't light the lantern. Not because I didn't want to see, but because I already could. Even in the dark I saw the bridge. It pulsed faintly with a blue glow, low and rhythmic like the beat of a slumbering heart. The wood beneath my boots was warm. Not just warm but alive. It responded to touch, to presence. It remembered. Remembered me. The mark on my palm had grown. It now traced down my wrist like veins, glowing whenever the fog thickened. It wasn't just a scar anymore, it was a tether. Connection. Contract. And tonight it felt different. Tonight the bridge called. I didn't walk to the center. Not at first. I stayed at the edge, staring at the space where the fog thickened the most. The midpoint, the tear between this world and whatever waited beyond it. That's when I saw her. Mizzy. Not flickering this time. Not translucent. She stood in the center of the bridge, barefoot, wearing the same coat she'd worn the night she disappeared into the mist. Her eyes locked on mine. Come, she said. I obeyed. The planks felt softer underfoot, like wet skin stretched tight. Each step pulsed beneath me. Closer. Closer. Until I stood face to face with her. Is it really you? I whispered. Maisie smiled, but it was sad. Resigned. Part of me. The part that didn't cross. Where's the rest? Her eyes drifted to the fog. Still there. Still watching. Just like you. The bridge moaned beneath us. A long, low sound like wood and bone grinding together. It's waking up, she said. I didn't ask what it was. I didn't want to know. She stepped aside. And that's when I saw it. A door had formed in the center of the bridge. Made not of wood, but of flesh. Stretched skin and bone, stitched together with black thread. A handle shaped like a jawbone protruded from its side. Maisie placed her hand on it. You have to see what's behind it, she whispered. I shook my head. No. No way. That's not. This isn't part of the bridge. This is something else. It is the bridge, she said. It always was. You just weren't ready to look. The fog thickened around us. Shapes moved within it, slow and circling. Not crossing. Not yet. Waiting. Open it, she said. Before it opens itself. My heart pounded. The mark on my arm burned hot, wrapping around my elbow now. I reached out. The jawbone was cold. It snapped open the moment I touched it. The door creaked, not like wood but like sinew tearing. Inside was not another world, not hell, not even darkness. It was memory. My memory. The bridge showed me everything. The first night I stood guard. The first scream I heard from beyond the fog. The night I let a man pass because he looked too human to stop, and watched him melt into something else halfway across. The time I tried to run. The time the bridge wouldn't let me. But worse than all that, it showed me why I stayed. Not to protect others. Not to guard a world from what's beyond. I stayed because the bridge wanted me to. And I like being wanted. Fed on that. It fed on the quiet vanity of sacrifice. The noble lie of selflessness. The need to matter. I staggered back, the door slamming shut behind me. Maisie was gone. The fog was gone. And the bridge was quiet again. But I wasn't. My mind reeled. My legs gave out beneath me, and I dropped to my knees. I hadn't saved anyone. I hadn't stopped anything. I was a lighthouse keeper for a storm that had already flooded the world. And the bridge. It didn't need a guardian. Needed a witness. Something that would remember. That would speak of it. That would lure more in with the false promise of protection. I had become its voice. That night I made a decision. I carved the mark on my palm deeper, tracing it with the edge of my blade until blood soaked the wood. And I whispered. No more. The bridge shuddered. Not violently but like it was listening. I took the blade and stabbed it into the plank beneath me. A scream erupted. Not from the bridge but from the fog. Dozens of voices. Hundreds. All howling in pain. The plank split open, blood pouring out like sap. The mark on my arm dimmed. And for the first time in years, I felt separate from the bridge. Not free. But no longer owned. The fog parted. The trees beyond were visible again. Real. I stood, hand bleeding, breath shaking. And walked off the bridge. Behind me it didn't disappear. Stayed. But silent. Dormant. Waiting. I made it back to the cabin by sunrise. Inside I found the journal. Filled with entries I didn't remember writing. Pages stained with tears, blood, fog. But at the very end, one final entry written in handwriting that wasn't mine. You looked behind the door. Now tell them what you saw. It wasn't a threat. It was a command. The bridge still wanted its witness. No. I had no choice but to obey. But maybe I could change what I said. Maybe I could warn them. Maybe I could lie so beautifully it would keep them away. Maybe. But deep down I knew. They were already coming. The ones who come. They arrived on a night when the fog didn't wait until dark. It rolled in around noon, thick as soup, curling over the hills and slipping between the trees like it had always belonged. And with it came the pull. A low hum beneath my skin, vibrating through the mark on my arm, now nothing more than a faint scar but still warm, still connected. I tried to forget, to bury the journal, to tell myself the bridge had gone dormant after I bled into it, that it was sleeping now and maybe if I stayed quiet enough it would forget me. But it hadn't, and neither had they. The first knock on the door came just after sunset. 3 sharp raps, measured, purposeful. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. They let themselves in. A man stepped into the cabin, face blurred by the swirling mist behind him, but his silhouette was clear. Tall, thin, dressed in a heavy coat that dripped fog like water. I could see steam rising from his shoulders as if he'd just crawled out of something warm and foul. Behind him came 2 more. A woman with hollow eyes and a child holding something limp in its arms. A rabbit, maybe. Or something pretending to be a rabbit. They didn't speak. They simply stood there watching me. You came from the bridge, I said. My voice cracked in the cold. The man tilted his head. No, he said. You did. I stood. My legs felt heavy, each step like dragging through mud. Why are you here? We are the ones who listen, the woman replied. Her voice brittle like broken glass. You were chosen to speak. I glanced at the journal on the table. The final page was blank now, waiting for my story. I've already told it, I muttered. I wrote everything down. Every scream. Every lie. Every time I told someone to stay back when I knew they wouldn't. The child stepped forward. Its face was expressionless. Not enough. What do you want? The man pointed past me to the window. The fog outside twisted violently. Through it I saw the bridge. It hadn't just returned. It had changed. The planks were no longer wood. They writhed, black and shiny, like the backs of beetles pressed edge to edge. Where the railings once stood, long, bony fingers had curled upward, reaching toward the sky as if the bridge itself were clawing for something. "Tonight," the man said. "They come." "Who?" "The rest." I didn't understand. The rest of what? The others who hear the story. Curious. The brave. The ones who read the warning and think it's a map. He stepped toward me, and the fog hissed around his boots. "You fed it," he said. "With your fear. With your words." "No," I whispered. "I was trying to warn people." He smiled, and it was all teeth. "Too many. Too sharp." Every warning is an invitation if it's spoken well enough. Chorus of footsteps rose outside. Hundreds. I stepped toward the door and pulled it open. They were coming down the hill. Some with flashlights. Some with cameras. Some just walking, transfixed, drawn like moths to fire. All heading toward the bridge. Tourists of terror. Fans of the unknown. Believers of stories. The bridge wanted them. It had been waiting. The child beside me whispered, "Will you guide them like you always do?" I stared into the fog, into the storm of footsteps and curiosity. "No," I said. The fog pulsed. The bridge moaned. I grabbed the journal and the lantern. Walked outside into the swirling gray. The figures passed me, silent, their eyes glazed. I shouted, "Stop! Don't go any further." None of them turned. They walked faster. Toward the glow. Toward the mouth. I reached the bridge just as the first foot hit the plank. The sound it made wasn't wood. It was wet. And then came the screams. Not from the crowd. From the bridge. It rejoiced. Each person who stepped onto it began to change. Some slowly, some violently. Their bodies elongated. Their mouths stretched open and stayed that way. Eyes rolling back as if they were being emptied. But they didn't stop walking. Even as their bones twisted and their feet left bloody prints. Even as their hands sprouted fingers like tendrils, reaching for something unseen. They kept going. I turned and ran. Back to the cabin. Back to the journal. I turned to the final page. And began to write. Not a warning. Not this time. Lie. I wrote that the bridge was destroyed. That the fog lifted. That the road was closed and forgotten. That no one would ever find it again. That there was nothing left to see. The mark on my arm burned as I scribbled. I could hear the screaming growing fainter behind me, but only because I was drowning it out with fiction. I finished the entry, slammed the book shut. And the fog began to retreat. The bridge's glow dimmed. The howls faded into silence. When I stepped outside, the world was clear again. No bridge. No mist. Only the trees and the quiet. The child stood at the edge of the clearing. "You lied well," it said. He nodded. "It's the only thing the bridge can't feed on." "Are you free now?" I looked down at the mark. It was gone. Just skin. I turned to answer the child, but it had vanished. The cabin stood empty. I walked away from that place. For good. But sometimes late at night I hear footsteps in the fog outside my window. And I wonder, did the lie hold? Or is the bridge still telling my story?